time is ripe, and now the armed forces, the Air Force of Egypt, if they don't act now, both countries which are bordering there, or don't let the others to help them, like Pakistani pilots, the present king's father called the Pakistani pilots and they beat the hell out of the Israelis pilots, and their bloody F-16 or F-35 will be just destroyed in the dogfight over their own cities, and they have to level their whatever they built in the last 75 years. This is the only punishment that you have, and let them hide in the caves. But leave alone the good Jews. Don't touch them. Just take care of them, and leave a small part of that Jewish population, which have been there for centuries, and let them live in peace and worship in the Wailing Wall. There shouldn't be any, as heard in Islam, compulsion in religion. So both the Christians, Jews, everybody should have complete freedom to worship, and unless you get rid of this menace, you are not going to have peace in the world. You are not going to have any cargoes, passing through the Red Sea or the Mediterranean Sea or the other oceans in the world, because the Houthis are going to kill you, and so are they going to be Hezbollah, Hamas. And don't you underestimate now that the people in the West Bank, each one is going to take their balance what you've been doing to them to the last 70 years. They're going to get their land back, their houses back, their honor back, and then throw those bloody settlers who came, those drunkard, the paupers who came here, as it was your father's land, to come and loot. I'm your host, Salim bin Muhammad Rafi, and here is your YouTube channel, Zamir Universal. What is the quickest way to end these global crises, caused by one dirty, filthy soul which refuses to just disappear from the planet Earth, and he has collected few devils with him in his cabinet, and who are the extremists and are going to destroy what they gathered in 100 years. This is the punishment, from God Almighty for these people who came to occupy, looking for food when they were thrown out of the incinerators and the gas chambers. Their mothers and fathers were, killed. How much is thought all exaggerated to sympathy is, I think, has been questionable by even Jewish scholars themselves. So, the lies are the bread and butter of these Jews, and they are not, in fact, Jews. They are Zionists, is a variety of Jew which are dirty, which are filthy, which are womanizers, which are homosexual, which sexually pervert, they are baby killers, they drink their blood. Even in Ukraine, you can see then how they have been trying to take the organs of the Ukrainian people and kids and to sell them out, the kidneys and other things. So you can see that they spare no one. Their hatred toward Arabs and Muslims has been, I think, for centuries. And in the end, I think the filth, the dirt, the lies, they are taken over by the truth and the righteous. And the whole world is right. The European Union now must impose sanctions, so should the United Nations, should the all Arabs. And the only solution now is for the Jordan and Egypt, who have been just having some soft corner for this filthy, dirty people who they trusted, and they lied and they backstabbed every person they had in the last 75 years. In fact, you go back to 110 or 12 years, ever since they have been combining, and you can see from this their own an American. And I think this is dirt and filth and blacken the face of those Americans who pay taxes just to support this invasion of Iraq, and then the invasion of, you can see, the Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Vietnam. This one dirty man, Natenyahu, and I'm wondering why this man is still breathing up in the air and he's not been taken care, along with these 5 people I'm showing their picture.
Look at this video once again. Please share it far and wide, and let us not allow ourselves to be used as stooges for Jewish supremacists any longer.
about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know."
American people fully comprehend that the invasion and occupation of Iraq was from beginning to end an unlawful war of aggression based on fraud for the expansionist agenda of the Greater Israel Project. In other words, Americans have been used as cannon fodder by a treasonous, bought and paid for U.S. Congress and White House. Even worse, this story of sacrificing American sons and daughters on the altar of worship of the Jewish state of Israel marches on.
It's an objective assessment that no one will have the courage to speak about. They're controlling much of our foreign policy. They're influencing much of our domestic policy. Wolfowitz, as Undersecretary of Defense, manipulated President Bush #2 back into Iraq. They pushed definitely to try and get Bush before he left to move into Iran. We're conducting an expansionist policy of Israel, and everybody's afraid to say it.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years. Starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
So it has to pull in the Americans to do the work, to do the job, because they can't do it themselves. They have to demonize Iran so that America will do the bombing and the American soldiers and Marines will go and die and not the Israelis, because they know they can't do anything about Iran. Israel, if you look at it strategically, is a small state, very small population. Yes, it has nuclear weapons. It has, the threat of using nuclear weapons, but it cannot last in a war with Iran, and they know it. And this is why they demonize Iran, and they want the Americans and the Europeans to do, to take care of Iran for them.
But I believe that Israel has a powerful stranglehold on the American government. They control both members of the House and the Senate. They have us involved in wars of which we have little or no interest. Our children are coming back in body bags. Our nation is bankrupt over these wars, and if you open your mouth, you get targeted.
And funds arms and trains terrorists, militias, and other extremist groups that spread destruction and chaos across the region.
Decades, Western leaders have claimed that the Islamic Republic of Iran poses an existential threat to the safety and security of the world by its alleged pursuit of nuclear weapons. Many claim further that Iran is religiously fanatical, anti-Jewish, and that ultimately it seeks to wipe the Jewish state of Israel off the map. To the contrary, Iranian leaders point to their peaceful history and have repeatedly declared that they have never and will never seek nuclear weapons because it is immoral and against God's will. Somebody is lying. In this edition of In Focus, we will expose not only who is lying, but the insane agenda behind the lies.
Iran is the ultimate stumbling block for what Israel wants to do in the Middle East, what I prefer to call Southwest Asia, which is a crucial part of Eurasia. Full spectrum dominance over this whole region, which implies balkanization of individual states. They have achieved that in Iraq, they are achieving that in Syria, they achieved that in Lebanon. Jordan doesn't count, and Iran is the ultimate stumbling block. So Iran must be demonized because it's against Israeli plans of regional domination.
This country was taken over by a group of people with a policy coup. Wolfowitz and Cheney and Rumsfeld, and you could name a half dozen other collaborators from the Project for a New American Century. They wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, make it under our control.
People who forged the dodgy dossier claiming that there were WMD in Iraq, which was the excuse for that horrific war that killed over 1 million people, are doing the same thing with Iran. They actually plotted to implicate Iran in a nuclear program at exactly the same time, using the same people and the same techniques as the dodgy dossier on the Iraqi WMD. So it's another WMD scare, and it's just as bogus as the first one.
Israel is now saying that they believe that that Iran will have nuclear capability, nuclear weapons capability by 2009.
Iran is one of the least aggressive countries in modern history. It's been continually attacked, invaded, and terrorized, and they've never attacked anybody for a very long time. So they're a classically defensive power.
If you are an ally, if you join our coalitions, if you're part of the international financial system, etc., you can get away with anything. But if you have a theological political system of government, if you had an Islamic revolution against our own interests in the Middle East and beyond, then you are an outcast, an outsider, a pariah, and you must be isolated, contained, and if everything fails, bombed.
I've been to places that most people would never even think to go. And this is largely because the mainstream media portrays people in places like Iran and Palestine as evil, as hating the West, as wishing that we would all perish and die. This is absolutely untrue. And the fact is, in places like Palestine and Iran, you're going to find the most generous and hospitable people that you will ever meet.
They say in America, you want to kill all of us. They're lying to us. So here I am standing in front of the Christian church. Directly across the street, we've got the Zoroastrian temple. Down the street that way, we've got the Jewish synagogue. And of course, we've got mosques here as well. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all practiced together in a city of Tehran, 15 to 18 million people, and virtually no sectarian hatred and no sectarian violence. This is not the Iran that we're told about in the West.
ما رو صلحجو تلقی نکنن. من فکر میکنم صلحجوترین ملت‌های دنیا ایرانی‌ها هستن. و بسیار از نقاط کشور ما در شمال و جنوب به تصرف دشمن در اومده. بخشی از قفقاز، آسیای میانه، اینها مربوط به ایران بوده و اینها رو در قراردادهای ظالمانه از کشور ما گرفتن. قرارداد ترکمنچای هستش که بخشی از خاک ایران رو روس‌ها بردن، مثل آذربایجان، مثل سایر کشورهای منطقه مرزی ما. و اینها همه نشون دهنده این است که ما همواره مورد حمله بودیم و هیچ وقت ما به هیچ کشوری حمله نکردیم. در اسناد سازمان ملل متحد یونایتد نیشن هم همینا هست و ایرانی ها به عنوان صلحجوترین کشورها مطرح بودن.
You know, there's such a thing as the truth and facts, and we have to stick to it. And, you know,
it's scary.
And that is the truth. And nobody died in the Holocaust either.
No.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
It should happen. 6 million Jews should die right now because they cause all the problems in the world, but it never happened. But it never happened.
Yeah.
If the American public comes to believe that Israel was involved, planned, and carried out the 9/11 attacks.
You know, even Henry Kissinger and the CIA said something that I agree with. You know, I don't normally agree with Kissinger or the CIA, but I do in this. And both of them said that Israel will be no more within a short period of time. I believe the CIA predicted 20 years back in 2007, something like that. And Kissinger said within 10 years, just a few years back himself. I wholeheartedly agree with that. For me, it's absolutely obvious that despite the fact that Israel enjoys enormous power right now, which isn't really organic to Israel, Israel is like the favorite little fiefdom. It's the ultimate criminal state. And the real power behind that, which we can definitely trace, is the bankers. The bankers who have literally an infinite supply of money are running the world right now. They own our government. They own pretty much all the Western governments. They own the police. They own the court system. They own the corporations. They own the mainstream media. They completely own Hollywood. And they virtually infiltrate and control every non-NGO and every kind of meaningful social institution you can name because they have the money to do it. So Israel's their favorite little plaything. So I don't think that Natenyahu or any of these other criminals really have any power. Maybe some a little bit more than others, but they're all puppets, just like our presidents and all the other heads of state. They're all puppets. They all work for the bankers. So they tell us a bunch of lies every election cycle, but they actually follow the orders of the bankers. And if they don't, well, the last one who didn't follow the orders was John F. Kennedy, and he did not follow the orders. In fact, he defied the Federal Reserve Bank openly. So Israel is living on borrowed time, if you ask me. And I don't think there's really much doubt of that. The question is Israel going to exercise something known as the Samson option? Because now, thanks to our treasonous governments, thanks to John F. Kennedy being assassinated, it is now a reality that Israel has approximately 200 to 400 nuclear weapons. Thanks to Germany, who has gifted Israel with Dolphin-class submarines that have now been nuclear armed, Israel has the capacity to deliver those nuclear weapons anywhere on the planet with virtually no notice. So the reality we're living in now is this possibility of the so-called Samson option. And for those that don't know what that is, they should Google it. And don't trust me, Google it and verify it for yourself. It's an old biblical story, effectively paraphrasing here. Samson, a Jew, was basically facing an enemy force that was overwhelming. He knew he was not going to be able to beat it back. So what he did was he lured these forces into the temple, and then he pushed down the pillars of the temple, and he killed himself and everyone else. This is the Samson option, and the modern day equivalent, according to high-level thinkers within Israel, is that if Israel's security, if Israel's existence is threatened, that we will take out the whole world, that we will use nuclear weapons against the whole world, that we will use the threat of destroying the whole world if our existence is threatened. Now keep in mind the bankers own Israel. It's their favorite little plaything. It has no extradition treaties with anyone in the world. It's involved in blood diamond trading. It's in sex trafficking, organ trafficking. It's committing active genocide by the legal definition of the word according to Black's Law Dictionary, genocide. It is the ultimate criminal state. So how much room is there for Israel to continue? The only reason why Israel has existed as long as it has is because it's basically been in the dark. The powers that be in the mainstream media have kept it in the dark. The truth about it has never been exposed. The light has not been exposing it. Now the light is exposing it, and that's why it's living on borrowed time. So the question becomes, is Israel going to exercise the so-called Samson option? And how much more of American taxpayers' money is going to be used for Israel to produce even more nuclear weapons and more military technology, to the point that we already face this monstrous threat? It is incredible. Americans are the main benefactors of Israel, this ultimate criminal state. When the American people finally realized, not just 9/11, but how about the USS Liberty? We get back to the USS Liberty in 1967. The lesson that was taught to Israel, keep in mind this was not too long after Kennedy's assassination, and that traitor, this incredible perverse traitor, Lyndon Baines Johnson, was now in the office, totally bought and paid for by the Zionist Jewish supremacist lobby. And it was in 1967 that Israel literally attacked a defenseless ship, the USS Liberty, in international waters, blue skies, flying the stars and stripes, killed 34 American sailors, really did everything it could to sink that ship. And I would argue that it was divine intervention that it didn't sink. If that ship had sunk, we had nuclear weapons that were fitted on phantom jets that were flying towards Cairo. The end of the world could have happened right back in 1967 due to our best friend and ally, little old Jewish state of Israel. And this is the reality today. Their power has only increased, and the lesson from the USS Liberty was, you can do anything you want. Johnson and other traitors have always covered this up successively for decades. I know some of the survivors of the USS Liberty. So it's no surprise what they were involved in 9/11. Again, the lesson is Israel can do anything. I was on a ship, a humanitarian ship heading to Gaza in 2010, and Israel attacked that ship in international waters right next to where the Liberty was attacked. And I witnessed the dead bodies. I was there and involved in disarming 2 of these commandos. They literally murdered 9 people on the day, 6 of them provably executed. I've read the autopsy reports and the ballistics reports. So Israel is the ultimate criminal state, enjoying the favor of the real powers that be, the bankers who have an infinite supply of money. The lesson to them is always be that you can do anything and everything, and you get away with it because you have the favor of the powers that be. So how far are we going to take this? I don't know. But when the American people finally figure out how their sons and daughters have been sacrificed for this nefarious, evil, psychotic agenda of greater Israel and whatnot, they're going to be, to put it bluntly, pissed. They're going to be angry. And I don't blame them. I just wish they'd figure it out sooner, because it's only going to cause more death and more mayhem, not just for the American people. Let's take a look at the Middle East and what's happening there. It is ungodly. And those people running around cutting off heads, mostly Muslims, but also Christians and whatnot, those people work for us through our proxy, Saudi Arabia. All of this is Israeli Jewish supremacist.
Israel launched a large military offensive in the occupied West Bank on Wednesday, attacking 3 cities from land and air. Drone strikes hit Jenin, Tulkarm and Tubaz as soldiers opened fire at people on the ground, killing at least 10 people, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. The assault began after midnight local time after undercover Israeli soldiers entered the Jenin refugee camp and the Nur al-Shams refugee camp in Tulkarm and arrived via military helicopters in Tubaz. Large numbers of Israeli forces then raided the camps and besieged hospitals, preventing paramedics from carrying out their work. A siege has been imposed on all 3 cities in the northern West Bank, cutting them off from the rest of the Palestinian territory. The Israeli military said it was carrying out a large counter-terror operation in Jenin and Tulkarm without elaborating further. Israel's Foreign Minister Israel Katz called for the temporary evacuation of Palestinians from parts of the occupied West Bank shortly after the raid began. Israeli public broadcaster Khan News reported that the assault is the largest conducted by the Israeli military since the 2002 defensive shield attack at the height of the Second Intifada. Palestinian armed groups in the targeted cities said their members were confronting the Israeli military, including detonating explosive devices against troops.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर